of the third party.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks to the Minister. I specified transit then ferries, but I will sandwich a quick Highway 99 question in the middle there. So, but start with I'll start with Handy Dart. Service used by many residents in Greater Victoria unable to access other forms of public transit. Recently, many users have been left frustrated and neglected by this necessary service due to difficulties in booking and limited operating times. Users required to book services over the phone, but some have reported hours-long waits, and issues with the requirement to book 2 weeks in advance. Even with this, many people have been denied trips due to lack of capacity. BC Transit reports that these issues are not due to budget cuts, but instead are the result of an excess in hours from last year, allowing extended services at the beginning of 2025. This would suggest that an increase in services is needed, since many were finally satisfied with the level of Handy Dart operations available during the intervening time. In the 2025 budget, the government estimates $19 million is still needed to complete the construction of the new Victoria Handy Dart Centre. This does not address the operational funding gaps that are currently preventing users from accessing the service. How will the provincial government address the barriers to Handy Dart access for users who rely on this service?
Recognizing the Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. I thank the member for the question. What I can tell you, Honourable Member, is that overall, in terms of Handy Dart for BC Transit, the funding is increasing by $49 million over 3 years. But specifically in the case of Victoria, there will be 7,500 hours of new service in the next year, and 7 new vehicles.
Recognizing the member.
Thank you. Obviously, British Columbians rely on our. It's okay. A bit of a preamble. So, British Columbians rely on our public transportation system. Yet, this important service is under constant threat of privatization, budget cuts, and reduced services, making it insufficient to meet the needs of the province. Freedom of mobility is a human right protected under the Charter, and it is the responsibility of governing bodies to uphold this right. Access to our public transit has been dwindling, and British Columbians are looking to the government for answers. What is the ministry's plan for the long-term vision of public transportation, and how will they ensure that everyone has equitable access to safe and reliable transportation services?
Recognizing the minister.
Thank you, Honourable Chair, and I appreciate the question from the member. I'm going to ask a quick clarification question on him, but before I do that, I just want to make it, the 49 million I was referencing was for BC Transit as a whole across the province, and that, but within that is the 7,500 hours for Handy Dart service in Victoria. And then I just wanted to make sure I'm hearing the member's question correctly. When he's talking about the way he framed the question, public transit, how important it is, are you referring just to BC Transit, or are you also including TransLink in that question as well?
Recognizing the member.
That would include TransLink.
Recognizing the minister.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. No, and I appreciate the member's question, because I think we are both on the same page on the importance of public transit, whether in the Lower Mainland delivered through TransLink or whether in other parts of the province through BC Transit. We've invested since 2017 more than $11 billion in capital and operating. The recent agreement we've reached with TransLink, for example, that has seen the province put in a commitment that's going to allow for further expansion in terms of an increase in service, working with the Mayor's Council in terms of the longer-term sustainable funding solutions for TransLink. At the same time, recognizing that transit is far more than just the Lower Mainland, and the growth that we are seeing in communities around the province, particularly larger centres, Victoria, Kelowna, Kamloops, and smaller communities as well, and the increasing demand from Indigenous communities in terms of having access to transit services. Those are very much part and parcel of the thinking and the work that's underway within the ministry in terms of future expansion with BC Transit. As the member no doubt knows, that service expansion is cost shared with the local government and the province on almost a 50-50 basis, and the increase that we've allowed for that's in the budget for this year is going to result in service increase in a number of communities across the province.
Recognizing the member.
Thanks, Madam Chair. That's great, thank you. I think the supplementary to this is maybe a little more concrete for allocating some of that extra money. So if I got my budget numbers correct, 187 million, 187.7 million in operational budget, representing a $22.3 million increase from the previous year. How does that additional, how are those additional funds, how are they allocated, and will some of it go to the service increase? Is that either through increasing the number of routes or procurement of more transit fleets?
Recognizing the minister.
Thank you, Honourable Chair, and through you to the Honourable Member. Thanks for the question. So the numbers the member was quoting, so some of that is obviously for inflationary pressures. There's about 15 million there. Some for expansion. Again, the provincial portion being 6 million for increase in service, and then obviously that's cost shared with local government in terms of their participation as well. And of course, service expansion obviously requires capital investment, and we are there's $500 million as the provincial share for capital over the next 3 years, and so that will be earmarked for buses, electric buses, as well as exchanges and any manner of capital requirements that BC Transit and communities have.
Recognizing the member.
Thank you. I'll just make sure I heard correctly at the end, but just got a couple of questions on a kind of broader scale. As we know, fuel taxes are declining for a number of reasons, particularly the increase in number of EVs. I know the minister's been asked several times in the House about vehicle levies and mobility pricing. My question, I guess, is, and that conversation may still be ongoing. If the minister can tell me anything about some of those options and plans, and if not, then maybe what is the process to arrive at a substitute for fuel taxes that we can take going into the next few decades?
Recognizing the minister.
Thank you, Honourable Chair, and I appreciate the question from the minister. I mean, from the member. And I'll start off by saying, this has been the topic of some conversation, both here and in the House. And I'll start by saying we have made it clear that mobility pricing, road pricing, is not an option. The mayor's councils have made that. We have made that, and I said that's not on the table. That aside, what I have also said, and this is in the agreement that we have with the council, with the mayor's council, and TransLink, is they receive the $312 million to help with their operating challenges that they're facing, which will ensure that there's no service cuts, but there's expansion over the next 3 years. And during that time, we've committed to working with them on what alternatives to ensure the long-term stability, operating stability of TransLink would be. There have been a number of things thrown out there, and we will work with them in terms of identifying potential revenue sources, what they would mean, what their impacts are. Are they sustainable? What would they do for TransLink? Because the member is quite correct. We are seeing a decline in the fuel tax as people switch to, this province has the fastest uptake of electric vehicles in the country, and one of the fastest uptakes in North America. There's no sign of that changing. In fact, my partner and I just got a new vehicle. It is a hybrid, and what I find absolutely amazing is I've now put 1,500 kilometers on it, and I still have half a tank of gas. It's got me convinced, let's put it that way. In answer to the question is as I said, it's like, look, we've got to work with TransLink on what those solutions are, but recognizing that there are, some significant shifts taking place within the province and nationally in terms of, as it relates to the decline in the gas tax and the increase in electric vehicles, all of which have an impact on TransLink's operating, but at the same time, the rise in electric vehicles also means that they don't pay the gas tax, or very little of the gas tax, yet they still have an impact on our transportation infrastructure.
Recognizing the member.
To that, and I apologize if it's in the budget documents, but am I not correct that BC Hydro levies a rider of some kind on residential billing that does go towards transit, public transit, or is that my mistake?
Recognizing the minister.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. To you, the Honourable Member. There is $1.90 a month on all residential hydro bills. It goes to TransLink.
Recognizing the member.
It's good to know that EV drivers are actually contributing small amount, might diffuse some of that. Anyway, some of that vitriol that EV drivers aren't contributing at all. I don't know that $1.90 a month cuts it, but it's good to know there's a basis there. I'll move on to just have a question about medium-term planning process for infrastructure. I believe the minister mentioned, I think it was $500 million over 3 years in capital, if I'm not okay. Just a question about planning ahead, as you know, as I have some communities in my riding that are looking at expansion. How are decisions about ordering buses made to ensure that routes aren't waiting for delivery? And how does this extend to other facilities like maintenance facilities and depots in terms of planning for future expansion?
Recognizing the minister.
Thank you, Honourable Chair, and to the member, I appreciate the question. So BC Transit has a planning process around service expansion, working with local communities that are seeking expansion. And part of that process then is obviously what's required, what existing infrastructure is in there, what expansion would need to take place, does expansion need to take place in terms of the existing facilities to accommodate new service expansion. One of the things that we are having to take into account have been issues around supply chains, and particularly when it comes to the delivery of new buses. There has been a reduction in the number of companies that are actually making buses, and that has impacted in terms of the delivery time and the supply chain issue in terms of securing new vehicles.
Recognizing the member.
Thank you. I'll move on to the road questions. I've got a couple more than I thought because I've got some from my colleague from Saanich North and the Islands. I'll start with those. Saanich North and the Gulf Islands have been struggling with road maintenance issues. Despite these communities having lower traffic than more urban areas, cumulative impacts of road use have caused deterioration that continues to go unaddressed despite many requests. Can the minister speak to any plans to maintain and fix deteriorating roads, and particularly roads with lower volumes that tend to receive less maintenance? Sorry, I'll ask too, will the minister assist with funding to repair faded road lines to ensure the safety of Gulf Islands residents?
Recognizing the minister.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. So I'll start with the last part of your comments first. So the line painting is done on a 3-year cycle on the Gulf Islands, and the start of the next 3-year cycle is this year. So, and they will be starting on Salt Spring Island. So in terms of the roads and rehabilitation, we've got a record level of in the preservation budget, it's $2 billion over the next 3 years. 596 of that is for side roads, including those that access Indigenous communities in different parts of the province. And so there's a significant amount of investment on the issue that the member is raising underway.
Recognizing the member. Oh. Recognizing the minister.
Thank you. Yeah, and I failed to also, thank you, Honourable Chair, I failed to acknowledge or mention a specific project in the members, the House Leaders riding, and that is a $22.9 million project on the Fulford-Ganges Road between Seaview and Cranberry Road. The project scope includes widening to accommodate 1.2 meters of paved shoulders on both sides of the project, installing storm drainage infrastructure, and the project will be completed by the end of this year.
Thank you, Minister. Recognizing the member.
Thank you. That's a well-timed question. I appreciate the answer. I'm sure the member will be happy to hear that. In Saanich, the Highway 17 Keating Crossroad flyover overpass project is intended to allow vehicles to travel more safely and efficiently. Set to be completed this fall, but residents have expressed concern over the lack of sufficient planning to serve all modes of transportation. Earlier this year, Central Saanich Council passed a motion requesting the province provide the district with a plan for a pedestrian overpass across the highway. Transportation improvement projects need to offer complete solutions for all modes. While the current plan includes a new sidewalk on Keating Cross Road, not enough to provide sufficient space for cyclists and pedestrians. Can the minister explain how the ministry makes decisions on transportation project scope and why expensive and time-consuming development projects like Keating Cross Road flyover do not offer solutions for all modes of transport?
Recognizing the minister.
Thank you, Honourable Chair, and to the member, I appreciate the question. So on this particular project, the two observations I'll make. One, there is going to be widened sidewalks on the project, as well as wider shoulders. In terms of the, I think the member's referring to like flyover, pedestrian overpass. We are working with the local community in terms of what the best options are in that area.
Recognizing the member.
Thank you. There's a dire need for continued development on a rapid bus system for the Saanich Peninsula that connects ferries, the airport, and uptown. Can the minister speak to how that work is progressing and what this budget offers to help advance it?
Recognizing the minister.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. To the member, appreciate the question, and in order to get accurate information, I'll get back to you with the answers to that question.
Recognizing the member.
Thanks, appreciate that. So we have a couple of questions about the Sea to Sky corridor, Highway 99. First, just dealing with the highway itself. The minister knows roughly 700 million was spent before the Olympics to upgrade the highway. Volume continues to increase. It's just seeing more traffic. The biggest concern I hear from constituents is the highway attracts people who drive fast or joyride, including loud motorcycles, that's another topic. But when the highway is closed for a very serious incident, it's often closed for 6 or 8 or 10 hours because they're waiting for ICARs, the integrated collision analysis and reconstruction services. Can the minister comment on whether there's any possible solution to this? It's obviously a difficult situation. People want to be compassionate for those who are injured or potentially there's sometimes fatalities. At the same time, people are trapped on the highway for 6 hours in distress, sometimes in the heat or the cold, or missing flights. There many different scenarios. Is there any discussion? I mean, the ideal would be an ICAR's office in Squamish to service this from the other side. Otherwise, they're coming from the Lower Mainland, which can be a challenge even just to get them there when the highway's closed. Is there any potential solution to this that could be implemented?
Recognizing the minister.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. I appreciate the question from the member, and I totally get and understand the frustration that people in this field, because I have experienced that firsthand, and it is very, you're right, you have compassion for the person in the accident, but you also understand the frustration of people who are, and maybe I will say it, that there are people who are morons on the road, and they think that they can do whatever they want, and they have a right to drive as fast as they want, particularly on that highway. So what I can tell you is this issue is really more belonging in PSSG, and it was one where I dealt with when I was at PSSG, but I can tell you that my ministry works closely with them on issues such as this. This is something that does concern me, and I'm happy to raise the solution or the suggestion you raised with PSSG, because I do think there needs to be some way of, if there is going to be a closure, at least to try and lengthen it, and if one of those issues that the member is identified is, having to bring people in from other parts of the Lower Mainland, if there's a way of having something there on the 99 or the Sea to Sky. Let's see if there are some options that potentially work. But yeah, no, I totally agree with the member. It can be incredibly frustrating. So I'll leave it at that.
Recognizing the member.
Thank you. So we'll kind of pass over the question about Sea to Sky public transit because I noticed it's in the mandate letter and it's in our accord with between the third party and the government. And that's, that kind of shorter term solution will be very welcome, and I'm looking forward to working more on it. That the discussion around that has been buses on the highway, which is a good solution. However, the highway is sometimes congested, and so longer term, I'm hoping to keep the rail option on the radar, and I'm just wondering if the minister can comment on potential of that rail corridor currently leased to CN, very lightly used, formerly BC Rail, the whole story. But potential to allow there is actually a passenger, kind of a luxury Rocky Mountaineer, like a tourist service, but the long-term potential to get the use of that rail for passenger services, and especially since it is used between Squamish and North Vancouver for freight, but otherwise really not very much anymore. And so just trying to understand if the minister has any tricks up his sleeve around convincing CN to get involved and help out in that regard.
Recognizing the minister.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. Appreciate the question from the member. And I'll just say this. Well, I'll start off by saying, if I had the ability to convince the railway to do something, then I'm pretty sure I could probably solve all the problems of the province and half the problems of the country. Because I've come to learn that there's the federal government, there's the provincial government, and above them both is the Federal Railway Act. And the Federal Railway Act tends to view both levels of government as an annoyance more than anything else. That being said, I'd love to see rail on that corridor. As you said, you rightly said, it is lightly used. One of the best services that we have out my way is the West Coast Express, which is an amazing service on the CP line. But I also know how difficult it was to get that there. That being said, if there is a way or an opportunity, I'd be more than open to seeing, how that could happen. Because I think, a passenger service, rail service, commuter rail service, passenger rail service would probably be very much a success on that line, particularly up to Whistler. There is, and I know there is also that service that goes from I guess Pemberton to Lillooet. The First Nation has, because I've met with them, because they have been concerned that CN apparently has a responsibility to provide that service, and keep trying to say no, they don't, and when in fact they do. But I take the member's point. I'd love to see it, but I don't have a magic wand.
Recognizing the member.
Thank you. Just as an aside, I do believe there's a bus that can travel on the rail tracks around Seton Portage area that, it does seem to be supported. But, some in the northern part of the riding, large trains are not required, but a bus a bus that can travel on the rail is probably appropriate to the population size. Okay, I will recognize you've had some BC Ferries questions, and it's a tricky one. Maybe I'll just start with the structural. I just listened to the mayors of Gibsons and Bowen Island on a CBC radio interview talking about the structural difficulty of various finger pointing between BC Ferries Corporation, BC Ferries Commissioner, and BC Ferries Authority, and perhaps this ministry. This is a problem that is actually affecting Bowen Island. Well, no, it's affecting all the ferry communities. Bowen Island is the ones that I hear from. Big picture, does the minister have any thoughts about how to increase accountability and responsiveness in this kind of multi-pronged governance structure that seems to make accountability difficult?
Recognizing the minister.
Thank you, Honourable Chair, and I appreciate the question from the member because, I believe that ferries should be accountable. BC Ferries should be accountable to the communities it serves, and it's important that they are listening to them and meeting the needs of those communities. I also recognize, as the member rightly points out, that it is a complex organization, and there is the ferry commissioner, who is independent, but in turn, they are accountable themselves in terms of the reports that they give. But what I also want to make sure that Ferries is doing in terms of accountability is ensuring that the authority and the services board are working in a collaborative fashion and in a collaborative approach to ensure that BC Ferries is meeting the needs of its customers and the communities that it serves, of which there are, I think, 47 communities up and down the coast and on Haida Gwaii that they serve.
Recognizing the member.
Yes, Madam Chair. I'll focus on Bowen Island, obviously part of Metro Vancouver, very close to Lower Mainland, becoming more and more popular for tourism, both regional and international. Residents and business owners on Bowen are excited to share their island, but the surge in tourism brings about very challenging pressure on the transportation system. So residents have issues with accessing their home on the island or leaving the island during peak travel. Easter weekend just passed, and we've heard quite a bit about it. I'm actually going to skip the question about increasing ferry services. There's one vessel that in the on-time performance has been dipping, but there is one simple solution that is actually fairly cost-effective that's been proposed, and perhaps the minister has been speaking with the mayor of Bowen Island, but on the Bowen Island Snug Cove terminal, BC Ferries staff do not leave the ship, essentially. So the marshalling is done, or not. The marshalling would have to be done by the municipality, and the cost of that is fairly nominal, and so I believe they're in discussions. But this seems like an easy fix. New ships. Horseshoe Bay Terminal is a whole other issue, but low six figures to give the municipality opportunity to put a couple people on the ground to help load and unload boats in a pretty congested harbor in the summer. It does seem reasonable, so I'm just wondering whether the minister can provide any comment on whether the feasibility of that kind of assistance on the Snug Cove side.
Recognizing the minister.
Thank you, Honourable Chair, and to the member. If I can get details of the proposal, I'll get staff to reach out to BC Ferries with the proposal and connect with the appropriate individuals in the village of Bowen Island.
Recognizing the member.
Question originating from Sydney. BC Ferries gets annual funding from the province to subsidize ferry fares and keep them affordable. Subsidies go to support the minor and northern ferry routes, unless I'm incorrect, not the major routes. 2020, BC Ferries received $308 million in additional funding from the province and federal government related to COVID. Last year, BC Ferries was given an additional $500 million to ensure the ferry fare increases could be kept at a reasonable level within 3%. Does the ministry, on April 1st, 2025, fares increased by 3.2%. Does the ministry anticipate the fare increases will be capped at 3.2% as planned, or will there be more taxpayer funding needed to support BC Ferries should they need more funding to ensure fares stay within that rate?
Recognizing the minister.
Thank you, Honourable Chair, and thank the member for the question. The Ferry Commissioner has ruled on the fare increase, and it is for the full 4 years, and we're not aware of anything over the 3.2%.
Recognizing the member.
Thank you. Federal government currently funds BC Ferries a small amount each year, approximately $35 million compared to BC's approximate $195 million. Will the BC government be asking, will the minister or the BC government be asking the federal government to increase its subsidy for BC Ferries?
Recognizing the minister.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. Yes, I'd like parity with the Maritimes.
Recognizing the member.
Leave this. Obviously, BC is growing quickly as a province. Population increased 2007 to 2022. Population increased by 25%, 7% higher than the national average. With this increased population, as we know, comes equally intense growth in our transportation needs. Our climate change accountability report says that transportation accounts for our highest proportion of greenhouse gas emissions and has increased by 18% in the last number of years. How does the ministry plan to address the carbon intensity of our transportation sector? And how will, as the population grows, how will the transportation sector look ahead at the projected emissions and actively find solutions to this problem?
Recognizing the minister.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. I appreciate the question from the member. As I mentioned a moment ago, I got the new vehicle, and I'm really impressed by the fact that 1,500 kilometers and I still have a half a tank of gas. I'm like, wow. But within the ministry itself, we have there's a number of initiatives. Obviously, the big one is transit and public transit and the investments that we make in that. Along with that, active transportation policies and programs to get people out of the car, particularly when we're building infrastructure, charging stations, which the ministry is involved with, and then the heavy vehicle efficiency program. Those are all some of the responsibilities and the roles that the ministry has in terms of dealing with what the member was raising.
Recognizing the member.
Thank you. Just one more. Ferries. The minister is probably aware a company called Green Line Ferries has been trialing or has been getting ready to establish, and then we'll actually do a trial run of a model ship, an electric passenger ferry. When I lived on the Sunshine Coast, we worked on this. There have been several operations, passenger ferry operations, Gibson's, Bowen Island to Vancouver, that have started and typically last only a year or two. But it is a potential solution to, BC Ferries, if they can't buy new ships. It provides alternate service and could actually supplement BC Ferries rather than compete. The reason why it'll still, even though this operation does appear quite viable, the reason why it's challenging is because they typically try and fail. They're unsubsidized, and especially as fuel prices have gone up, they try and then don't succeed, so people don't find them reliable. So it actually takes a year or 2 years to develop that full ridership. And I believe in 2016-17 the ministry did some work on, former Minister Trevena did some work on a shorter term subsidy that would get them up and running, get them to full ridership, and at which point ideally they'd be self-sufficient. Just wondering if this ministry has considered anything in terms of passenger fare. I don't know what the situation is with Hello Ferries going from Nanaimo to Vancouver, but if there's any thought of helping with those subsidies for the short term as a complement to vehicle-centric routes like BC Ferries has.
Recognizing the minister.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. I appreciate the question from the member. We don't have any subsidies in the ministry at this time. That being said, we do see them as part of our transportation network. We have a good relationship with them. We meet with them, with Green Line on a regular basis. So we are interested in the work they're doing and their plans for the future.
Recognizing the member.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the minister. I'll suppose that the minister's car is a plug-in hybrid if he's got 1,500 kilometers out of half a tank of gas. Yes. We have one too, but traveling the Sea to Sky Highway, the battery only goes about 30 kilometers, so they're ideal in urban locations. With that, I appreciate. Thanks to the minister for his time, and to the staff, and thank you. And have a lovely evening. Thanks.